What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I'm back for another episode of Under the Radar. This time it's not a two-parter, we're back to just one for this week. Of course, there'll probably be a couple of times later in the month where you might get two parts, possibly. That remains to be seen, but we got one episode this week as there's 4 other albums that I wanted to talk about. This first one I'm going to talk about that came out on the weekend of July 1st. I was going to do an individual review for it, but I was just so wore out yesterday, I just didn't have the energy to do that video, and plus, we had done the Horseman podcast, so you got your Sunday fill. So, here I am with the first album of Under the Radar this week, and that is Protector with Excessive Outburst of Depravity. Of course, Protector, a legendary death thrash band, I guess you call them, that formed back in the mid-80s out of Germany. Now the only guy from Germany in the band is Martin Hissey, I think is his name, who's the vocalist, and the rest of the members are Swedish, and in fact, Martin moved the band to Sweden in the 2010s, I believe. But regardless, this is their 8th studio album. I did check out their last album, Summon the Hordes, and I thought it was a pretty solid album. How does this one compare to Summon the Hordes? I'll just go ahead and say this album blows Summon the Hordes completely out of the water. If there's one word to describe this album, intensity. Now, like I said, they're described as a death thrash. To me, I think it's just thrash with little moments of death metal. Not like a proper mix of death metal and thrash metal. I think it's more just straight up thrash with little moments of death metal, like the blasts and some of the tremolo riffs. But for the most part, I think this is a straight up German thrash album, or Swedish thrash, however you want to say it, because of the members. But definitely, as I was going through listening to this album, it reminded me so much of Slayer. Like, holy shit, in terms of that guitar tone, the evilness, the sinister quality behind all the music, I was just like, if only Slayer would have played something like this on Repentless, I think it would have been a much more memorable closer for Slayer. And then again, I was saying that about bands like Exhumer as of late. It's like, Exhumer was doing what I thought Slayer should have been doing near the end of their career. Protector here on this album kind of continues that notion a little bit. It's just packed full. This album is just packed full with aggression, intensity, brutality, insanity, essentially. Like, there were a lot of moments on this album, like I said, that harken back to Slayer. But also there were these little, like, punk flurries in there, like some D-beat stomps, and so on and so forth. And like I said, you get some occasional death metal tremolos, and almost like the black metal blast. Vocally, it is very gruff. It is very, like, just in your face. Really, the only problem I had with this album was I thought the snare could have been a little bit bigger and a little more punchy. But aside from that, I fucking love this album. I'm already going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10. This was a fantastic album. Definitely one I probably am going to pick up because it's just... I would argue this album is up there among the best that Protector has ever done. Up there with their early classics like Golem and the Mad and Shedding of Skin. Like, I'd say it's up there in terms of epicness. But anyways, 9.5 out of 10 for Protector. So now on to the second album that came out on July 1st, and that is Flames with Resurgence. So Flames is a strange band, to say the very least. They're from Greece. They formed back in the 80s and were originally like a speed metal band that also was part of that first wave of black metal, because they were very similar to a lot of their contemporaries at that time, like Venom and Sarcophago, early Mayhem, like raw, evil, nasty-sounding speed metal that inspired some of the first wave of black metal. They continued pumping out albums up until about the mid-90s and then broke up, and this is their first album since '96, I believe. and quite a difference in style they're going for now. Instead of that like blackened speed metal, first wave black metal, whatever you want to call it, from their early era, now they're playing straight up thrash. Metal Archives described them as thrash / death metal now. I think this is just thrash. I don't really hear that much in terms of death metal. It's kind of like the Protector album, except the death metal elements are far less on this album. Like, again, this is another just straight up thrash album. And holy shit, I was not expecting much going into this, considering Flames, I've only heard the name because of like the black metal fans. Like their album, what was it called? Last Prophecy in 1990 is part of that first wave of black metal. That's the only thing I knew about these guys. I wasn't expecting much going into listening to this, and I was blown away. Like, the thrash that they're really kind of incorporating almost feels like a hybrid of Bay Area thrash and German thrash kind of combined. Like, it sort of mixes a little bit of Creator, whether it's like 80s era or current era Creator with those more melodic elements, and a lot of Bay Area thrash. Like, there's some Metallica in here, there's some Exodus, some Testament. It almost feels like an amalgamation of Creator, Exodus, Testament, and Metallica all on this album, at least for me. The riffs are punchy and just hit you right in the face. The production on this album, I was very impressed by. Like, every instrument, every vocal line sounded clear, but it also sounded organic too. Didn't sound overproduced. To some degree, at times, I did get little hints of like Power Trip, especially with like how the reverb was in effect. This almost felt like a modern day record recorded in 1986 to some extent, but I just couldn't believe how impressive some of these riffs were. It's like these riffs feel familiar, but they sound fresh. Again, I talked about this with Municipal Waste and perhaps some other albums that have come out this year. When you have bands that almost sound like they're paying homage to the old school, they do it in their own way and make it sound like they written it. I cannot fucking talk. They wrote it themselves. English, motherfucker. Can I speak it? No. But yeah, this is a massive album. I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. Like, holy shit. I just couldn't believe how masterful the riff writing was on this album. And vocally, kind of sits in between someone like John Conley from Nuclear Assault and Mila from Petroza from Creator. I am a goofball today, but in all seriousness, I highly recommend you guys check out this album. You will not be disappointed. So now on to our third album for this week's Under the Radar, and that is Ally Nation with Sociopathology. So this is the debut album from this Finnish melodic blackened death metal band, if you want to call it that. Like, on Metal Archives, they're described as melodic black metal. However, elsewhere I've seen them described as blackened death metal. I guess it's a hybrid of both, you can say. Now, this is their debut album, and they formed back in 2010, and have had a couple of EPs and such here and there. And this is their first full-length album. So, as I was listening to this, I'm expecting, like, something similar to, like, Dissection, or Necrophobic, or Thalcandra, or Naglfar, Sacramentum. Basically, any melodic blackened death metal band that's existed. I was expecting to hear some of that. Not really what I got here. What we got on this album was a bit of an odd listen, because there are these like almost like groove metal breakdowns here and there, almost hardcore-ish. And there's also some death metal breakdowns, particularly like mellow death breakdowns from bands like In Flames and Soilwork and those kind of bands. You get some of those moments here, and there's even a couple of little instances of like slams, not like total slams, but like almost like suffocation breakdowns, even though it's played with more melodic guitars on top as opposed to like chuggy squat stuff. I don't know. It was just like some of those elements I didn't think worked for me, but when they got down to like the real melodic black metal sections, they were really well done. Like with the tremolos and the blasts, they were able to do it very well. Vocally, kind of inconsistent, especially with the more black metal scream. Like sometimes he got like way too high, and sometimes he would sound like a traditional black metal vocalist, but the death growls were actually pretty strong on this album. Musically, like I said, they're trying to go for all sorts of different things, and for me, not all of it worked. That's not to say that there weren't any good moments. There were plenty of really solid moments where you get these really cool tremolo riffs, some thrashy energy can be heard at times. The grooves were done fairly well, but like I said, for the style they're going for, those breakdowns kind of made the listening experience for me a little bit jarring. And for those reasons, I'm giving this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's not a bad album, it's a solid album, it's a solid debut, though I definitely feel like with more time and with more confidence in their songwriting, if they get to do a second album, I'd say it'll probably blow this one out of the water. So you have to start somewhere, I suppose. And that's all I can say about that. And now on to the final album for this week's Under the Radar, and that is the second release from Conjurer, Pathos. So, yeah, this is a new band for me. I've never listened to Conjurer before, and this is only their second album, but it's their first one on Nuclear Blast Records. Good on you guys for getting on there. So, Conjurer, I've heard they're supposedly like sludge metal, post-metal, and doom metal with elements of hardcore, metalcore, death metal, and black metal. For me, the sludge metal part of it, I don't think is quite accurate. There was only like one track that had anything sludge metal. For me, this is like doomy post-metal with all those hardcore, metalcore, death metal, black metal moments. Basically extreme doomy post-metal is what I would call this. But regardless as to whatever you decide to call this band, one thing is for sure, they know how to write songs with atmosphere, with mood, with murk and disgust, and just absolute disgust. It just covers all the basics of what I was just talking about for their sound, with that doominess, the post-metal in terms of like how they're constructing the songs. Some hardcore breakdowns, some more metalcore moments, especially in the vocals. Like vocally, you get your cleans, and the cleans were pretty damn good in terms of fitting with the music. And then you get like death growls, which were really strong, and then you get more like hardcore growls, and then like almost black metal screams. So vocally, this vocalist is just going everywhere in the realm of extreme and in the world of melody. I cannot get my words right in this video today for some reason. But in terms of like cohesiveness and the flow of the album, I would say it flows well in terms of everything being cohesive. Some of the transitions I thought were a bit wonky in terms of like going from one genre to another. It wasn't like a natural transition into something unless they like slowed everything down and then get down to that doominess that this album has here and there. Even in a couple of tracks, you get little hints of funeral doom in there too, because of just that very dark, depressing atmosphere that this album conjures up. No pun intended. But overall, I actually thought this was a pretty damn good album. For my first time checking out Conjurer, I wasn't disappointed. I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. I thought this was a pretty damn good album. Granted, me not being the biggest fan of post-metal, I thought this one was really good. Granted, I don't think it's better than Cult of Luna, at least for me, but it's up there. I think this is a pretty solid album. I recommend you guys check it out. And of course, that does it for this week's episode of Under the Radar. What did you guys think of all these albums? If you haven't checked them out, there will be links to the albums in the description box for you guys to check out. And until next time, horns high. See you guys soon.
What the heck is fellatio?
Cole, out of all the
Deep-throating a
people in
dick.
here, you should know what that is.
Every time I'm soft,
Yeah.
I'm try to dab a shine.
Is it a new way to torture
It's getting a
people?
little too friendly.
No,
Well,
it's
depends on how you look at it.
Wait, so fellatio is stimulation of the penis? Really?
Thanks for letting me do that. I might pick that car.
Cole. It's another name for a blue job.
Okay. Every time I'm...
I thought it was a dick
it's a deep
punishment.
throat blowjob.
Alright, here we go. Okay.
Moving on.
Sounds like Carson's getting one right now.
God damn.
This game has gone to hell.